friends, it's Paul Ward here, and welcome to On the Road. Well, if you're like me, you love to travel or at least get away for the weekend. Our next guest is a true expert in this field, Jackie Lapin with the Historic Traveler. Welcome to On the Road.
Hi, Paul. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So I wanted to have you on because you do traveling with a twist. You have a knack for travel, but also you love history, and so like you like to jump into the history of a location before you visit, and now you're sharing your expertise and knowledge with other folks who have the same or a similar hobby interest.
So let's add a third element of that. Reading about history, whether that's a historic novel, a historic mystery, or a history book, or a biography of somebody. So when you wrap all that up into one thing, that becomes the historic traveler. That's why we're not just another travel blog. So we not only give you photography that I've taken at over 500 locations all around the world, and my photos aren't bad. And then a lot of storytelling that really brings it to life. I've been a writer my whole life.
Mhm.
And then I give you the recommendations of the books to read that make you feel as if you lived it. So this is people who, really love to get immersed in history. And so we created a blog. That's the Historic Traveler, and I encourage people just to come and sign up on the little guest book so that if you miss blogs, we can keep you updated on the ones that are upcoming and past. And then for people who wanted to go deeper, we created a membership program. Now, let's say that you want more information. Well, I've got a 75-page magazine and it's filled with great stuff. And we can talk about what some of those stories are at some point here. Then let's say that you would like to read those kinds of books I was talking about. Well, we have the world's first directory by country or city. So read before you go. Or if you just like novels, you're going to give you an unending supply. Now, let's say that you love TV historic dramas. We'll give you a list where you can watch them on broadcast and on streaming. Then let's say that you want the world's largest list of historic hotels, B&Bs, and inns. We've got that for you. And then, hey, if that's not enough, we've got travel discounts. And you know how hard it is to find a travel agent today? We
Hmm.
actually will give you a travel agent for free that'll help you book your trip.
Interesting. So
It's
let's
cool
pick a place.
stuff.
Let's say I'm going to go to Ireland. Know very little about it, but that's where the family decided to go. How would it work with the historic traveler? What would folks do and kind of plan for that trip so when they're there, they know more than just buying the ticket and landing.
So the first thing you'll do is you'll look for a blog that tells you about some of the places there. Now, right now, I've got one up there on Killarney in County Kerry, which is just a charming and adorable town. And I got lots of pictures so that you can see what it's like before you go. So you want to look in the blog to see what's there. Then we also have a directory of the world's of the I what I think is the world's best directory for history lovers. That guide is the Insight Guide. So we have a complete directory. So you would go right there and you'd get the directory for Ireland because it's really terrific. And let's say that, you're already a member and you might want to find a couple of novels to read. So you'd go over to the book directory, you'd put in Ireland and you'd say, okay, I want history or I want historic novels or I want historic mysteries. Well, there's this great series that would be ideal for you if you like Ireland. So you could start reading that series. Or if you're more into nonfiction, I'm going to give you some really good fiction, nonfiction about Edinburgh and other places that is going to give you some perspective on all of that. Now, let's say that you come to the community meeting and you call out to people because the community meeting meets once a month. You call out to people and say, okay, I'm going to Ireland. What should I see or who should I talk to? Other people are going to give you their connections and people as well. So it's pretty encompassing. And now let's say that you haven't done all your travel plans, but you know that you want to spend a couple of days running around Dublin. And So you go to our travel section. The first thing you can do is you can go on to Viator through us and find local walking tours or local bus tours in Dublin. That'll make it really easy for you. And let's say you haven't got a hotel. Well, you can look in our hotel directory for historic hotels in that area, or you can go over to the travel agent and say, "Look, I want to go, but I'm looking for discount, really inexpensive travel in Ireland." And they're going to look up things like condo stays and really inexpensive hostel stays because they can get you the bargains. That's one of the great things of our travel partner. They get it for you like way less than what the average is.
So
So
you,
all of that makes your travel a whole lot easier.
and you've been to over 50 countries and 500 tourist or vacation destinations, I would say.
Well, sometimes it's a different city. I'll go to Switzerland and I'll go to five places, but some of them might not be a city. So in France, for example, we went to the world's oldest continuing hospital. Now, isn't that an interesting
That
story?
is, I would not think of that as a destination to visit, but
14th century, and it's an incredible building.
interesting.
And so, it's combination, it's cities, villages, landmarks, like there's a massive Roman aqueduct that's three tiered in France, and we made a dedicated stop to that. So I will spotlight. The blog is really divided between cityscapes, spotlights of something that's really interesting, and then collections. For example, one of the blogs that I've done upcoming is on my three favorite historic libraries. And they're scattered all over the world. And
Hmm.
there's going to be lots of more collections where I bring together like things to kind of give you from some perspective from something that really fascinates me.
So folks can read a novel, they can watch a show, they can watch a movie, or multiple books, right? Stories, all through the blog.
Now, let's say that they really want just they love photography.
Hmm.
I also have a photo gallery and it's slowly expanding, but by the time we're going to be done, it's going to be massive. And so there's individual collections there. So we have one on the Chicago River Architectural Tour that's historically perspective.
Hmm.
And then we have one there on the Oregon coast, and I have one on beautiful roses. So lots of great photos if you just love photography.
Hmm. How did you get into this?
Well, it started when I was in fourth grade, and they took me on a tour to the missions as part of my school.
Hmm.
And I got the bite. It just bit me. And so from there, I became a history nut. And when I got into college, I had the pleasure of being an unofficial minor in California history. And the instructor that I had was one of the two leading historians of California history of all time. And so he just made it fascinating. It was really theatrical and fun, which deepened my enthusiasm. And then when I graduated and started to work, I started to travel for fun or for business. And I'd always, especially when I was doing business, I would tie my travel to something where I got to explore as well. But, I would always carve out somewhere between 2 and 5 weeks a year when I could just travel and take my cameras. And of course, today, what's really interesting is I'll still carry two cameras,
Oh,
one that
really?
I shoot exteriors, one that I shoot interiors so that I don't have to go back and forth and is better on certain kinds of detail. But the cell phones have gotten so good that
Hmm.
a lot of times they fix the lighting problems that I might not be able to solve with my own camera without a lot of, fun fussing around. So I always actually shoot with three cameras, but the cell phones a lot of times turn out better than the other ones.
The new cell phones they're amazing. I mean,
Stunning.
they are amazing. So, what was your first blog? I mean, you've said 50 countries, 500 locations. What was the first one that you decided to actually chronicle and share?
Well, actually, I started with a welcome blog, but the pictures I picked were from my collection of the iconic historic photographs from all over the world. You know,
Mm.
things like the London Bridge and Edinburgh Castle and, the Washington Monument and the Leaning Tower of Pisa and things like that. So that's the first one. And then the second one I did is there's a castle in the middle of Milan that was created by the Sforza family. And if you know anything about history, Il Moro, who was the Duke at that time, the Duke of Milan, did some very nasty things. He knocked off people in order to take the crown, the dukedom, and he's really a fascinating character that shows up in a lot of different film and television because he was so intriguing. And so the castle where he and his family lived is right there now in the middle of Milan. He was also the one who commissioned Da Vinci to do The Last Supper and also the canals that run through Milan. So I portrayed the ins and out inside and courtyards in the outside of the Sforza Castle for the second one. And then the third one is on the Chicago River.
I would think that that would be so much more meaningful and impactful to know the history of the location rather than just kind of wandering around aimlessly, right? Because if you know the history of Milan and the Duke and just I mean we're going back centuries, but just to kind of wander around and see these historic buildings and I mean not every single detail, but to know generally what transpired there all those years ago is just so much more meaningful to have a history trip like that than just kind of wandering around visiting, ice cream shops and tchotchke stores.
Well, and the fun part of the blog is, I'm going to tell you some of that history, but not so much that it's going to, get you bored.
Right.
Paragraph or two, so you have perspective. Then I'll talk about the buildings and what you're seeing. And then I might even, for example, in that particular case, the family crest was intertwined snakes. And so then I'll show you a picture of their family crest on one of their ceiling arches. So I'm going to draw your attention to the details that make you feel like, wow, people really lived here.
Hmm. Interesting. My son read Diary of Anne Frank, and we're going to Amsterdam this summer, and we're trying to get into Anne Frank's house, just because it would be so much more meaningful for him to actually see the house. Part of his project in school this last year was he constructed her house out of balsa wood and popsicle sticks, and he painted it. It was very intricate and beautiful, and I just think it would be so much more meaningful for him to actually be able to physically visit that house than just having built a model of it.
Well,
Quite.
and add to the fact, if he reads the diary, that will, bring the perspective. When I was talking about the Sforza Castle, I gave you 3 or 4 different books of women who actually lived in that castle and what they experienced, that historic, and people can pick up a lot of history. I learn a lot of my history from novels. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be hardcore history books.
Hmm.
I love the fact that a novel can fill me in and entertain me at the same time. So I will put the pieces together. Oh, that's what happened here. Oh, yeah, I read about him. And I remember now the guy that came to him and did this. And so it all comes together. And
Hmm.
reading about it, really, when you combine the visuals and the little bit of the story in the blog and then a book on top of it, you really get a sense of that place.
And for folks that want to read but really never do, you've got links to movies and TV shows that they can watch and documentaries.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some of
Um,
my favorite documentaries are the Ken Burns, and we include those.
oh yeah, love Ken Burns. In '97 I went to Europe by myself for 5 weeks, and my Bible was Rick Steves' Europe Through the Back Door. Had that thing just frayed with little tabs, and was just wandering around, and everybody had that book. Everybody was in their 20s, and everybody had that book as kind of their go-to Bible at the time,
Well,
pre-internet.
well, the interesting part about that is I saw him last week at the travel show, and he signed a book for me, that particular book.
Wonderful. That's incredible. Yeah, he was definitely the go-to book.
Yeah.
So is your travels mostly Europe or Asia or South America, or do you have a just kind of wandering the world?
wandering the world, but I also include the US. So
Okay.
it's not just outside of I've been to every major city in the United States except
Oh,
Savannah, which I can't wait to go to one of these days,
oh my gosh, my
and,
assistant, my
and
assistant
Memphis.
who's gonna edit this video, that's exactly where she lives.
Oh, well, that's been that's a bucket list city for me. So so I pick out in fact, there's a guide that I have that's called 20 international cities that you can make you feel as if you are immersed in history and the books to read. And then I have one for the US that's 18 North American cities. And we can add those to the notes if you'd like. So people can go to thehistorictraveler.com/guide for the international one and /NA guide for the North American one. But so I pulled together the North American ones there, and that includes Canada. So I love Quebec City; it's great.
Hmm.
And then outside, my real love is Europe. But I'm interested in everywhere.
Sure.
I've been to Asia. I've been to Africa. Mexico. I haven't been much to South America. I need to. I'm going to add that to my next spots on my bucket list are Turkey and Egypt. So I'm hoping to go there next year,
How
both.
many weeks of year are you traveling?
Well, in my years when I had a big agency and I had people that worked for me, I used to go 5 a week, 5 weeks a year, divided into two trips. Now it's less, but I had the joy 2 summers ago to go to Europe for 9 weeks.
Wow, that's a good
And
run.
I listed all my bucket list cities that I had never seen, and I hit most of them. It was just incredible.
Now,
So
are you staying in historic inns? I mean, are all of your stops in historic spots that, you know, so and so would have stayed in, 150 years ago?
not all, but most. For example, there were two of my favorites that stood out on that trip. One is called Des Balances, and that's in Lucerne. It used to be a guild hall. And when you go out onto the balcony, it has this incredible view of the Royce River and all of the things along it. It's particularly the covered bridge that's iconically pictured everywhere in
Yep.
the world. And then the other one that I really loved was a place in Verona where two 13th century palazzos had a courtyard in the middle. They built the lobby into that, covered over the courtyard, and then connected all three together. Now, not only do you see occasionally they leave spots on the wall so you can see the original walls from the palazzo, but when you go into the dining area for the breakfast room, there is a window in the floor where you can look down into a Roman home and see the mosaics.
Wow.
It's
How,
very cool.
how cool is that? And then knowing the history of the place just makes it that much more meaningful.
Absolutely.
You're not just wandering around, aimlessly and saying, "Oh, look at that. What is it?"
Exactly. And and the locals they're so pleased to tell you about the places that you're looking at, places that you're staying. They're so proud of the history that they love to share it with people. And I learn a lot from both the locals. And here's a little tip. If you are on a tour with a walking guide or even a bus guide, first of all, sit close. Don't sit in the back. Don't
Hmm.
stand in the back. Ask questions. The more
Hmm.
questions you ask, the more it's going to enrich your experience. And they know so much. I had the pleasure in Ireland of having a tour guide who had been the BBC's history expert
Oh,
for
wow.
many years. And not only did she bring that perspective, but she also lived in Belfast and grew up in Belfast. So she could tell us not only about the massive historical perspective, but what it was like to live in Belfast during the Troubles
Hmm.
as a child and growing up in that environment. So, how much more does that make me understand what the people there have gone through to get to a more peaceful state?
Yeah. You know what I love about the best thing about traveling, I think, are the unexpected things that happen. Like you didn't know that you were going to get the BBC, director as your tour guide, right? That just happened to kind of right place, right time. It's just kind of the magical part of traveling, the unexpected
Absolutely.
things.
Well,
I
and the
love,
other thing that I love about traveling is what I call all the angels. You know, when you're standing there on a street corner and you're looking like a deer caught in headlights, and somebody walks up to you and said, "Can I help you, miss? You look lost." Or, "Can I help you with that suitcase?
hmm
And let me help you get that on the train." You know, I just love the fact that people are so generous and so kind.
Yeah. Is there a North American city that you think is underrated that everybody needs to visit at least once?
Well, certainly Charleston is a fabulous city that you just can't not take advantage of. But there's lovely smaller places like Santa Fe.
hmm
I think that's wonderful. And if you look around parts of Denver, you're going to find a lot of the history written there. I was just in Boise, and Boise has a lot of the remnants of its history that is still very current. I took a little bus. Another great way to tour something is a hop on, hop off bus.
hmm
And I did that in Budapest, where you can just get off at any place, explore the history there, get back on, go to the next place, and with one single ticket. And you'll get to see all the hot spots, and then you can fill in the rest afterward. But it is the fastest and easiest way to really get a good perspective in a town quickly and easily. And I like to do the bus tour the first days and then know where I'm going when I go back to for the rest more deeply.
hmm I love your motto. Marry your travel to the books that bring history to life.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's what we're trying to do. So.
Um, Now again, how can folks find the site?
You go to thehistorictraveler.com, and it's really important you put in the because there are other sites that don't have it. So, thehistorictraveler.com, run on over there and sign up for the blog. That's the first thing that you should do. And then explore, just see what's out there. And you can obviously take advantage of the two guides that I recommended, thehistorictraveler.com/guide, and the other one is /NA guide.
And you've also teamed up with another guide company, correct? That for places that you maybe have not visited personally.
Yes, we have a company called Elevate Travel X. And here's what's really cool. If people opt in for the membership right now, they are offering a $2,000 value drawing for 8 nights in Williamsburg, Williamsburg, Virginia, excuse me, so that you can experience a history in Williamsburg. And they're going to do that rotationally with us. So when that one ends at March 30th, there's going to be another vacation that you can potentially win at another historic location if you come on for the membership program.
Wonderful. Well, Jackie Lapin, thank you so much. We've loved having you for this episode of On the Road.
It's been a delight to be here. Thank you, Paul, for inviting me.
Absolutely. And folks, be sure to tune in next time for On the Road.